Hey Linewalkers, this is Jaime A. Heidel, the Articulate Autistic, and I have a brand new video for you today. This one is called Why Autistic People Do That, Video 33, Believe We Are Autistic or Find the Door. Now this is something that I have thought about for a while, and I've had it on my list of stuff I wanted to do a video about, or topics I wanted to do a video about, and I wasn't quite sure how I was going to phrase it. And as usual with these videos, I kind of just wing it. So you'll forgive me if I'm a little all over the place. But this is very, very important. And for some people, it may seem obvious that, if somebody says that they're autistic, you just take them at face value and yeah, of course you're autistic. There's no questioning that. There's no wondering, especially if the person has a professional diagnosis. Not that I'm not saying that self-diagnosis isn't valid. I think it's valid. I think very few people self-diagnose and then, for some attention-seeking reason, or some people may self-diagnose and get it wrong. But I really think that self-diagnosis is valid because there's a lot of research and a lot of soul-searching that goes into discovering that you are autistic. And when that happens, it's just a very painful, long, arduous journey that I don't think anybody would go on just for fun, because it's really not fun. So I have had incidences in my life, and I have had people in my life that do not believe that I'm on the spectrum. And for a while, I accepted that because I was self-diagnosed. And I didn't understand that just because I was giving them all this information, I was giving them books to read, and I was giving them articles to read, and I was listing the different things that I have going on that matched perfectly with autistic traits. I would have people say, well, if you feel you have these symptoms, then you should see a doctor, or, you can't be autistic because. And I know a lot of people, especially low support need autistic people, have this habit, rather, of seeing low support needs people who used to be called high functioning. We're trying to get away from that label. Seen as, you can't possibly have anything going on with you that's different. We don't see it, so it's not there. And it's very similar to people with invisible illness, chronic pain conditions. It's like someone could tell you they have fibromyalgia, and if you're just one of those people that's really skeptical, or who's really skeptical, you might be like, oh, that doesn't exist. But as someone who has invisible illness, mental illness, and is on the spectrum, I can tell you that I was invalidated pretty much on a daily basis before I had my official diagnosis of a lot of different things. If you've been following my channel for a while, you know that I had a breakdown in 2014, and that was the catalyst for me receiving my diagnosis, being on the spectrum, also OCD and PTSD. So it was very validating for me. I mean, I already knew that I was definitely on the spectrum. I knew I had OCD and PTSD, so I knew all of this just from doing my own personal research, and also just, knowing and living in this body and in this brain. And oh gosh, this is so hard. This is one of the disadvantages of me winging these. When somebody tells you that something is going on with them, or they have fibromyalgia, or they have, or they're on the spectrum, or they have PTSD, or they have depression or anxiety, it is incredibly invalidating, incredibly rude, and incredibly hurtful for you to turn around and say, no, you don't. I mean, think about that. If a person were blind and they were to introduce themselves to you with their cane and their seeing eye dog, and you were to say, they would say, hi, I'm Charlie and I'm blind, and you were to say, no, you're not, that person would probably slap you with their cane, or they would have every right to slap you with their cane and sick their dog on you. So somebody who is wheelchair bound, you're not going to see a person usually in a wheelchair who rolls up to somebody and says, hi, my name is Sarah, and I don't have the use of my legs. Someone usually is not going to look at Sarah and say, nah, you're just faking it, you're just pretending. And I think this is something that has gotten to me my whole life, is it just doesn't make any sense to me. I can't wrap my brain around it. I know that there are people out there who do make things up. I'm not saying that that doesn't exist. I'm saying it took me a long time to realize that it existed, but I know that it does. But if you wouldn't say that, you wouldn't say it to somebody with cancer either. And that's the thing that really gets to me, is that cancer is not always visible. I mean, the treatments, once you're going through the treatments and you lose your hair and you're sick and you're lethargic and tired, then, oh, it's pretty obvious that you have cancer. But if somebody were to say that to you, I was just diagnosed with cancer, you wouldn't say, no, you're not, even though you can't see any evidence of this. So that's what I'm talking about for autistic people. Basically, this is how I feel. If you don't believe that I'm autistic, you need to stay away from me, because you are dangerous for me to be around. You are very emotionally damaging for me to be around, because autistic people think and process information and have intentions that are completely different from neurotypicals in many ways. And it is so easy for a neurotypical person to misinterpret the intentions of a neurodiverse person based on their reactions, or, for example, we have an easy startle reflex. Many of us have an easy startle reflex. Many of us ask lots and lots of questions, and I guess from what I'm understanding, when neurotypical people ask lots of questions, it could mean something other than trying to understand. It could mean that they're trying to get out of something. This is all stuff that I post about on my Facebook page, The Articulate Autistic, if you want to go check that out. I post about this stuff in detail because there are many things that can be misconstrued and misunderstood that start out really small. They're really small conflicts, and they can get blown way out of proportion, pardon me, because the neurotypical person sees things one way and the autistic person sees another. And I think that constant miscommunication it can be very emotionally damaging for somebody on the spectrum. And honestly, it can be emotionally damaging for somebody who's neurotypical if they don't realize that the person that they're around is autistic, because there's going to be a different way of communicating. And it's very easy for feelings to get hurt and people to be confused on both sides if you don't realize that you're dealing with two different neurological languages. So it's very, very imperative that if you have someone who is autistic in your life, even if they appear high functioning, they're very articulate, like me, they are, they have a job outside the home, they're married, they have children, whatever you would think, maybe an autistic person wouldn't be able to do, which autistic people can do. You can't go by that, because autism does not mean sitting in a corner not able to do anything. It is a different operating system. It's like the difference between a PC and a Mac. And yes, we struggle. I struggle every day. It may not be something that you see, because most of the time I hide it, because I don't want to be the center of attention. I don't want people staring at me. I don't want people questioning me. I hate it when people ask me questions. And I will explain that a little bit. I just wrote a post actually today on my Facebook page about asking questions, and how sometimes when people ask me questions, I will just freeze and I can't talk. And so these are the kinds of things that neurotypical people could maybe think, that if someone freezes and can't speak, that they are guilty or they've done something wrong. Well, if a neurotypical person is with an autistic person and they treat that autistic person as though they have the same intentions as a neurotypical person, the autistic person is going to get abused, even if you're not trying to abuse them. Just being around, just having that constant misunderstanding and miscommunication can cause severe psychological distress to the autistic person. So I guess what I'm saying very emphatically is, believe someone when they tell you they have a diagnosis, especially if they have a diagnosis that's on paper. A professional has diagnosed them. They're not making it up. They're not pretending for attention. They're not trying to get out of something. The truth is, the autistic mind doesn't work that way. It doesn't. We're very literal. We're very straight to the point. Most of us really don't lie. I'm not saying that we can't, but it's just not a part of our daily routine. It's just not who we are. And I know a lot of us, once we get that diagnosis, we're so excited and happy to have it, because we finally have something that validates our experience of our entire lives, that having someone say, oh no, that's not true, and just dismiss it is like being punched off a cliff, hit in the gut, punched off a cliff, and landing in lava. The pain is something I can't even explain to you. And there are people who are no longer in my life because they are dangerous for me to be around because they don't believe that I'm on the spectrum. So I just can't emphasize this enough. If you have someone in your life and they tell you that they are on the spectrum, or they suspect they're on the spectrum, and they tell you how to communicate with them and what their reactions mean, if they're capable of doing that, that's wonderful. If they take the time to sit down and tell you this, this is valuable information that you need in order to communicate with them without having severe misunderstandings that can lead to the end of a friendship. So if they tell you they're on the spectrum, they're on the spectrum. If you don't believe that autism exists, or that autistic people exist, or neurodiversity exists, then you're essentially telling the person in front of you, you don't exist. You're not real. You're not human. You're not alive. You are fake. And it's devastating. I think it would be devastating for anybody to hear that, but it's definitely devastating for autistic people who have struggled for years, even decades, to try to find their place in the world. So please do us a favor, and if you don't believe us, don't be in our lives. It's that simple. It really is. I know that people have family members or, close friends, but either don't be in our lives, or if you have no choice but to be in our lives, please keep your contact with us limited. And I know how this sounds. It probably sounds ruder than most of my videos. But this is something that I feel very, very, very strongly about. I'm very protective of people on the spectrum, especially since I've learned more about how I communicate and how I think and process versus how a neurotypical does. And I don't even think I realized the kind of damage it was doing to me that people just didn't believe me, even if they didn't say it to my face. It was just the way certain people were treating me. And even though there wasn't actually any arguing going on or anything like that, I could always feel it inside. There were certain places that I would go where I know I wasn't believed. And even though nobody said anything, I could feel it. It was like this tension in the air that was always there, and I just could not wait to leave. And now I don't subject myself to that anymore. So that's important. If you have somebody who doesn't believe you, you are on the spectrum, and you have somebody who doesn't believe you, if you're capable of it, if it's not going to affect you in a negative way financially or something like that, tell them, you know what? Either believe me, respect me as a person, or there's the door. It's that simple. So I know that it's not always simple. It's not always black and white. You might be in a financial situation where you cannot leave, and that's scary in and of itself. That's a whole other video. But definitely respect yourself as a neurodiverse person, because you are valued and you are important and valuable, and what you have to say is important. We need neurodiversity in this world. So that's enough. I'll step off my soapbox now, but I just wanted to do this video and be a little more emphatic than I usually am, and tell autistic people, please stand up for yourself, because you are worthy, and neurotypical people, listen to us because we know what we're talking about. So thank you very much for watching this video, and I will see you in the next one.